A magic sword is any mythological or fictional sword imbued with magical power to increase its strength or granted other supernatural qualities. The archetype originated in myth and legend, and occurs regularly in fantasy fiction. Renowned swords appear in the folklore of every nation that used swords. Sometimes the sword is ascribed no powers of its own. It is famous because it is the hero's sword, or because of its origin, as when a god gives it to the hero. Other swords keep the wielders safe or destroy their enemies. A more localized motif is the sword that has been broken and must be reforged, commonly found in Northern Europe. Such a sword symbolizes the initial defeat and loss of honor of its wielder. Subsequent victory and the restoration of honor is achieved by reforging it, either at the wielder's hand or that of his heir. History. It is probable that the roots of the sentient weapon myth stem from ancient peoples' belief that sword-making and metallurgy was in fact a magical process. Through the fires of the forge, a lump of earth was transformed into a shiny usable object that could be hammered into many shapes, extending further from the transformation of ore into metal. The difficulty of actually obtaining a quality blade, which took intense concentration and skill, added to its esoteric qualities. While any blacksmith could manufacture a knife or an axe, only a swordsmith could create a high-quality sword. The secrets of doing so were jealously guarded, as well as formulas for alloys. The skill necessary to forge a balanced blade, one which is not too brittle or too soft and able to hold a usefully sharp edge. In the age before automated machines, blast furnaces, and the knowledge of molecular chemistry made the creation of a sword seem almost miraculous. A few degrees too hot or too cold within a very limited temperature range, which could only be discerned by the glowing hue of a hot billet, could make or break a sword. A lack of expertise in knowing when and how to apply carbon and flux and quench the blade could ruin weeks of work. Thus the swordsmith almost felt like he was one with his work, giving the process his complete devotion of concentration and thought. This led to the belief that he was actually imbuing the blade with an essence of his spirit. In Japan, the swordsmiths were so concerned with this belief that they would undergo purification rituals and meditation before even attempting to start a new blade, for fear that they might inadvertently create an evil sword. It is also important to note that in antiquity, metal was used as money, and thus a sword was a very expensive and highly prized item, a sign of wealth, status, and given holy connotations in many cultures. One would only have to see how they are referenced within the holy books of Christians, Jews, and Muslims to make this point evident. The Vikings prized the swords above all other things, handing them down from generation to generation and giving them names. The value of the blade was not only determined by its quality but also by how many battles that it was used in. Polynesian people such as the Maori also had comparable reverence for the weapons. They believed a weapon contained a spiritual force called mana, and that the weapon held the spirits of its maker, its line of owners, and also stole the spirits of those it killed. These weapons were highly prized for the mana and cherished as heirlooms. The samurai of Japan believed that the swords had their own soul that could possess them. It was not the wielder but the swords that desired to kill. Samurai were just the instrument that the sword used to complete their task. Since most of them were Buddhists, that train of thought gave them some peace of mind in their killing vocation. Later, as the concept of demons, spiritual possession, and elementals entered the realm of mythological themes, it was only a natural leap to attribute magical properties of the swords of folklore to indwelling spirits. Magic swords may exhibit various degrees of sentience, from being merely influenced by the wielder to being able to think for itself or even control its owner. Biblical. The Bible relates in the book of Genesis how God, seeking to deter Adam and Eve from returning to the Garden of Eden, placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword which turned every way. By some accounts, the cherubim are replaced with the archangel Michael, who wields a similar weapon. King David was given the sword of the slain giant Goliath by the priest Ahimelech, to which was attached extra-biblical mythology and traditions. In the book of Revelation, Jesus is symbolically described wielding a double-edged sword that proceeds out from his mouth, in reference to the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of truth. Mythological, Arthurian. In the legend of King Arthur, the king himself is related to two magical swords in most variants. The first is the sword in the stone. Only Arthur could draw it out, thereby proving that he is the rightful king. In some tales, this is his only sword. In most variants, this sword was then broken, and he receives from the Lady of the Lake a new sword called Excalibur, arguably the most famous of magic swords. However, in other variants Excalibur itself is the sword in the stone. It is not clear from the various accounts of the Arthur legend whether Excalibur itself was possessed of magical powers or merely had a magical origin, though its scabbard protected its bearer from physical harm. Many interpretations of the legend appear to endow Excalibur with a cutting strength and durability beyond that of ordinary weapons. In Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival, the eponymous hero is given a sword by the Grail King Amfortas. Parzival's cousin explains that the sword will withstand the first blow unscathed, at the second it will shatter. If you then take it back to the spring, it will become whole again from the flow of the water. You must have the water at the source. If the pieces are not lost and you fit them together properly, as soon as the spring water wets them, the sword will become whole again, the joinings and edges stronger than before. Ancient Chinese mythology relates the tale of Lu Dongbin, who slew dragons with a magic sword and performed freak feats with it. Germanic and Norse mythology, the god Frey possessed a magic sword that struck out at Jotuns of its own accord. Many other swords appear in Norse legend in the hands of heroes. Tifling appears in the Hervra saga. Svafrlami was the king of Gardariki, and a grandson of the god Odin. He caught the dwarves, Devialin and Durin, and forced them to forge a sword with a golden hilt that would never miss a stroke, would never rust, and would cut through stone and iron as easily as through clothes. The dwarves made the sword, and it shone and gleamed like fire. However, in revenge they cursed it so that it would kill a man every time it was used, and that it would be the cause of 3 great evils. They also cursed it so that it would kill Svafrlami himself. It would cost the life of not only Svafrlami, but also the life of the Swedish hero Hjalmar. A similar sword to Tifling is Danesleaf, a sword from the legend of the eternal battle Hjörning of Ig, made by the dwarf Dane. Like Tifling, Danesleaf gave wounds that never healed and could not be unsheathed without killing a man. There is also Mistiltian, a sword from the Romanda saga Gripsna, which could never go blunt and which Romand won from the undead witch King Thryon. Like Tifling, it was taken from a Barrow White. The various iterations of the story of the Volsungs include several magic swords. The first magical sword which enters the story is Gram, stuck by Odin into the tree Barnstoker in the hall of the Volsungs. Only Sigmund could pull it out. This caused considerable envy and conflict. Eventually, Sigmund fought Odin disguised as an old man, and Odin shattered the sword. Sigmund left it for his son Sigurd, who reforged it to kill Fanir. In the Nibelungen Siegfried discarded Gram in exchange for another magic sword, Balmung. Wagner's version of the story calls the sword Nuthung, rather than Balmung. The legendary smith Wayland Smith forged the magic sword Mimung, which appears both in the Anglo-Saxon poem Waldir and in the German, Scandinavian Thidrek saga. Beowulf wielded the sword Runting that was, according to the poem, annealed in venom. The sword was useless against Grendel's mother. In desperation, Beowulf grabbed a giant sword of great age and with it took off the head of the she-monster. Japanese. In Japanese mythology, there is a magical sword called kusanagi, which was one of the 3 crown jewels given to the Emperor Jimmu by the goddess Amaterasu. Additionally, the katana forged by Masamune and Muramasa were reputedly of such high quality as to be near magical. In the case of the Masamune and Muramasa blades, it was believed that some element of the smith's personality was imputed into the blade. These 3 swords have been used extensively in popular culture since then, especially in the realm of video game RPGs. Despite legends about Nihonto, those 3 are the most famous. Excellent Japanese swords often receive nicknames reflecting the cutting prowess. Also, unlike other magical swords, there is, for example, 10 or 11 blades attributed to Masamune who still exist today, such as Kan's Masamune, Kotegiri Masamune or Musashi Masamune. Spanish. More pragmatical Spanish legends talk too about magical swords. 2 belonged to the warrior Rodrigo Diaz de Viva el Cid, both with magical powers according to the medieval epical poem Cantar del Mio Cid. The first Tizona has personality of its own, with variable strength according to the man who used it, and even his sight was powerful. As it is stated in the Cantar del Mio Cid, El Dexo la Lanca y mano al espada mecho, cuando lo vio ferengoncles, con uvertizon, antes que el golpes dixo vencudo so. Cantar del Mio Cid, versos 3642-3645. Edición de Montana Frutos. The same is the case for Colada, which was powerful only in the hands of a brave warrior. France. In the matter of France, Roland possessed an indestructible sword, Durendal, which he threw into a poisoned stream to prevent its capture. Durendal was one of a set of 3 swords supposedly forged by Wayland and provided as ransom for a Norse captive, the other 2 being variously Bishop Turpin's sword Almas, Charlemagne's joyas, or Ogwe's sword Katana. Other in the English or Scottish medieval epic poem Graysdale, the hero uses a magic sword, Eking, which was made in the Far East. Written fiction. Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen features a golden sword called Chrysaor, the personal weapon of Sir Artegall, the Knight of Justice. The sword was given to him by Astraea, who had been holding it since the days when Zeus had used it to battle the Titans. Because it was tempered with adamant, it was described as being able to cleave through anything. In Der Ring des Nibelungen, Richard Wagner drew on the legends of Grimm for the sword Nithung, belonging to the hero Siegmund and later reforged by his son Siegfried and used by him to kill Fafnir. It is finally used by Siegfried to shatter the spear of his grandfather, the god Wotan, thus ending his power. The hero of Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky slays the Jabberwock with a vorpal sword. Although the poem does not define the word vorpal, the term has been adopted in role-playing games to describe a sword which possesses a magical ability to decapitate those against whom it is wielded. In the works of J.R.R. Tolkien such as The Lord of the Rings, many magical swords, usually with powers for good, are wielded by important characters. Gandalf uses his sword Glamdring in his battle with the Balrog, who wields its own sword of flame. Glamdring's sister blade, Orcrust, is buried with Thorin Oakenshield under the Lonely Mountain in The Hobbit. Bilbo, Frodo and Samwise carried the sword Sting. It and Glamdring both glow blue and orcs are near. Aragorn bears the sword Anguirl, a potent weapon against the evil of Mordor and a symbol of his right to rule. Turin Turambar, the main character of Tay Children of Hurin, wields the sword Gurthang. He eventually kills himself using the sword, which speaks to him before he dies, telling him it will kill him. This story is based on the Finnish hero Kullervo, whose sword also agreed to kill him. In addition, in Farmer Giles of Ham, the protagonist is given and wields a magic sword named Cordamordax, which, in the story, is translated to mean tail-biter. Hal Foster's Prince Valiant wields the singing sword, which makes its bearer undefeatable if he fights for a good cause. In Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's Dark Sword series, the Dark Sword is a sword capable of absorbing magic. Michael Moorcock created a sinister magic sword in Stormbringer, wielded by Elric of Melny Bonnet. This black sword has the power to suck out the souls of its victims and transfer their energy to its holder. It also appears to have a mind of its own, sometimes striking against its master's will. Mercedes Lackey's creation, the Sword Need, is similarly independent, although along less sinister lines. The 12 Swords of Power are the primary plot device in Fred Saberhagen's books of the Swords. Lawrence Watt Evans's The Misenchanted Sword involves the difficulties of dealing with the sword of the title. The protagonist must kill a man when he draws it, can only kill one, will die if he ever kills 100 men with it, and will not die without killing them, but will ceaselessly age. The blue sword contains a blue sword, known as Goncharan, that is both a symbol of power, an amplifier of magic, and a very sharp sword. It is also a sword with a mind of its own. In Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time is the sword Kalimdor, which is actually not a sword, but a powerful sunreel shaped as a sword and made out of crystal. It is kept within the Stone of Dare. It can only be taken by the dragon and is a major sign of his return. Until he takes it, the Stone of Dare will never fall to any invaders. But when the sword is taken, the stone is said to fall to the people of the dragon. It is later revealed that unlike other sunreels, it does not have the safety mechanism that prevents a wielder from absorbing too much of the one power through it. Terry Goodkind's series is named for its magical weapon, the Sword of Truth. This blade, with the word truth inlaid into the handle, factors into many of the moral decisions made by Richard Rull, the series' protagonist. The blade, like most magic in the series, is focused on need. The sword's master is referred to as the Seeker of Truth. The Seeker gains the sword mastery of all those that have wielded the blade previously. Many false seekers have carried the sword, but a true seeker can only be named by the first wizard. A true seeker has the ability to turn the blade white when he kills in compassion and forgiveness. Richard has done this twice, once killing the Maud Sith which captured him in Wizard's First Rule, and again to kill a Sister of the Dark in Stone of Tears. The eponymous sword from the Sword of Shannara series, by Terry Brooks, has a distinctive pommel in the form of the druidic symbol from the series, a hand holding aloft a torch. Otherwise it is visually unremarkable, though very well made and unworn. Its ability lies in revealing absolute truth, which can be difficult to bear. The sentiment of the enchantment follows that of the "to thine own self be true." Advice to Laertes, a prospective wielder, upon drawing the blade for the first time, is made to confront all the personal flaws, shortcomings, fears, delusions and morally questionable acts. If the being's psyche cannot deal with the revelations, they might not be permanently harmed, but the blade is unusable to them. However, if they can accept the truth of themselves, though it is still a jarring experience, they come out of it wiser for the self-knowledge. Also, they are able to wield the sword as both a particularly strong and sharp weapon, and as a harsh mirror of truth to those touched by the blade. This exposure to reality, like many years of counseling condensed into a moment, can actually destroy anyone evil enough, e.g., the Warlock Lord of the same book. It also can reveal illusions and give some protection from magical effects. Also of note is the sword Nightblood from the book Wallbreaker. Nightblood is a sentient sword which was given a direction when awakened. This direction was to destroy evil. However, being a sword, Nightblood could not judge right and wrong and killed almost indiscriminately. Simply undoing the clasp was enough for Nightblood to utterly destroy the one holding it. Nightblood was often recovered by a vasher sticking clean through a man, not even unsheathed. Nightblood, when fully drawn, consumed its user's biochromatic breaths at an alarming rate, while sending tendrils of darkness out to destroy anything the sword deemed evil. The sword could also telepathically communicate with its wielder, often asking questions such as, "Hello, would you like to kill someone today?" or alternatively asking to be unsheathed. The Harry Potter series of novels by J.K. Rowling features the Sword of Gryffindor, which is used by several of the book's prominent characters. The sword is an indestructible weapon crafted from goblin metal, the properties of which allow the sword to absorb any substance into itself that will make it stronger. In the case of the books, the immensely deadly venom of a basilisk. In series The Dancing Gods by Jack L. Chalker, the protagonist, the barbarian Jo, is given the last unnamed magical sword in her sequoia. In order for the sword to bond with Jo, he has to give it a name, preferably something heroic. However, Jo names the sword Irving after his son. In response to the exclamations concerning his choice of name, he states, "But I like the name Irving. Once bonded, the sword will fight for no other user, and will return to Jo if he calls it." Movies and television. In the Star Wars saga, which employs many themes of classical mythology, the lightsaber can be seen as a science fiction with a mythological analogue of the magic swords of myth. The device appears to defy the laws of modern technology. However, studies and experiments by scientists indicate the technology to be possible in the future. Within the Star Wars universe, lightsabers are made by the wielder as part of the training to become a Jedi Knight. In the movie The Golden Blade, the sword of Damascus, which can cut anything and makes its wielder invincible, is used by Harun al-Rashid to free a fairy tale Baghdad from Jafar, a usurper of the throne. The Masters of the Universe franchise more directly mixes magic and technology, with the titular hero deriving his power from a magic sword but living on a planet where the traditional gadgetry of science fiction is as common as magic. In the British television series Robin of Sherwood, Robin Hood carries Albion, one of the 7 swords of Wayland. The sword's powers include providing visions to its bearer. It cannot hurt its master. The Sword of Omens in the Thundercats animated series possesses magical powers and the Eye of Thunder in the hilt. Another sword, the Sword of Plunder, was a key element to the plot of certain episodes. In the Samurai Jack animated series, the father of the titular hero gave his son a katana from the gods to defeat the evil Aku. Only this magic katana could harm Aku, although it could not kill him completely. This magic sword would obey only its rightful owner, making it impossible to hurt Jack when his enemy wields it. The sword was forged of the pure spirit of good that humans possess, extracted from Jack's father. In the animated series Thunder the Barbarian, the main character Thunder wields the lightsaber-like sun sword. In the South Park episode Make Love, Not War Minecraft. The story contains a powerful sword referred to as the Sword of 8,000 Truths. A magic sword, named Sword of Triton, appears in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. According to the film's visual guide, this blade was forged in the lost city of Atlantis. The official Pirates of the Caribbean online website implies that the sword was forged by the sea deity Triton himself and that it has passed from one ancient mariner to another. By the events of On Stranger Tides, the sword is in the possession of the notorious pirate Blackbeard, who uses it to control ships at sea. In the film, Blackbeard first used the sword to hang his mutinying crew with the rigging of the Queen Anne's Revenge. Blackbeard lost the sword after a duel with privateer Hector Barbossa, who wanted revenge on Blackbeard for attacking the Black Pearl prior to the events of the film. Barbossa claimed the sword before leaving Blackbeard to die at the Fountain of Youth. Climbing aboard the Revenge, Barbossa returned to piracy as he used the sword to sail the ship to Tortuga. Anime. The manga and subsequent anime Bleach features several magic swords, called Zanpakuto. These katana-like weapons are a representation of the power of the Shinigami within the Bleach universe, and essentially come from within. As such, Zanpakuto can grow in strength and power in tandem with its user. These swords are often personified in humanoid forms throughout the series. All Zanpakuto have unique and often poetic Japanese names, such as Ichigo Kurasaki's Zanpakuto called Zangetsu, which means moon cutter. All Zanpakuto have personalities, emotions and feelings of their own, and it is stated that in order to use the true powers of the Zanpakuto, the Shinigami wielder must conquer them through training and battle, essentially forcing a part of themselves into submission. In Rave Master Hara's sword, Decaf Force sword is a kind of magic sword powered by rave stones. It is used by Haru to destroy Darkstones. In Naruto, another Japanese manga series, based heavily on traditional folklore themes, the legendary grass-cutter Kusanagi no Tsurugi makes an entrance. The sword used to be in the possession of the snake Sana no Orochimaru, as the poisonous blade complements the ninja's affinity to summon snakes. Its counterpart is said to be the sword Totsuka, a sword wielded by the god Susanoo, capable of sealing everything it touches into a pure state of peaceful entrapment. Guri Gabriev of the anime and manga The Slayers is a knight who wields the Sword of Light, a sword with a magical blade of pure light. In Yu Yu Hakusho, Kuwabara Kazuma wields his spirit power as a spirit sword, a lightsaber-like energy blade coming from a wooden handle made from a broken wooden sword tip. His power was later enhanced by a magical handle. In the various Tenchi Muyo media, the main character, Tenchi Masaki, gains the power of a legendary lightsaber-like weapon that accompanies a pair of energy wings that are his inherent power. Another character, Ryoko, has the ability to create a red energy blade. In the manga and anime videos Ogre Slayer, the main character has no name and is known by the name of his sword, Onokirimaru or Ogre Slayer. The sword enables him to track and kill ogres. In Inuyasha, both the titular character Inuyasha and his half-brother Sesomaru wield magical blades created by the father's fangs, and there are many other magical swords and weapons in the series, mostly gaining power from the energy of the wielder. In the anime and manga Reborn, the 10th Vongula Rain Guardian Takashi Yamamoto and Vario Rain Guardian Superby Squalo use swords. Yamamoto uses Shiguri Kintoki, which was given to him by his father. Squalo uses arm-mounted sword.